After a long journey, you have finally arrived in a new land. You immediately start building and developing your city. Over the course of 24 episodes, you and your fellow players will redesign your own cities, but at the same time deal with new rules and the progress of time. Let's learn how to play My City. Begin by giving each player one game board which they put in front of themselves, with the animal symbol at the upper left facing up. That will be the player's personal game board for all 24 episodes. At the start, all game boards are identical. Then every player should name their city. Each player gets a scoring token and sets it on the number 10 of their board's scoring track. Each player gets the 24 buildings, showing that player's animal symbol on the backside. Place your buildings face up next to your game board. There are 3 types of buildings: residential, public, and industrial. Shuffle the 24 construction cards and place them in a single deck face down in the middle of the table. For each building, there is a corresponding construction card. Every episode of My City consists of a number of rounds. In each round, you will turn over the top construction card of the face-down deck and place it face up in a discard pile. Each player then takes a building matching the one depicted on the construction card and places it on their game board. It's important that all players place their buildings at the same time. At the end of each episode, you get points for your buildings, which you mark on your scoring track. Whoever gets the most or second most points in an episode is allowed to color in 1 or 2 progress symbols, respectively. These progress symbols appear as circles in 2 rows at the top edge of the game board. The player who has colored in the most progress symbols after 24 episodes is the overall winner of My City. When placing the buildings, there are a few rules to consider. Firstly, buildings may only be built on the light green spaces, not on the mountains or the forests. Light green spaces with rocks or trees shown on them may be built upon. However, it is best to avoid building on light green spaces with trees if you can, because visible tree spaces will get you points at the end of each episode. Spaces with rocks should, on the other hand, be built upon whenever is possible. If these are not covered with buildings at the end of an episode, points will be deducted. The first building that you place on your game board must be placed alongside the river. It is not enough to have just one corner touching the river. A building may not be placed on the river in such a way that it lies on both sides of the river. You are, however, allowed to place a building alongside the river, even if it means that the river becomes partly covered. All other buildings must be positioned in such a way that they have at least one side bordering another building. Again, just having a corner touching another corner is not enough. Buildings also count as bordering each other if the river flows between them. Buildings may not be placed on top of other buildings that are already constructed. Once a building is placed, it cannot be moved. If a player cannot or does not want to construct a building, they are allowed to pass. They announce this out aloud and places their building face down in front of themselves. Then they have to move the scoring token 1 step back on the scoring track. If the scoring token is already on 0 points, passing is not an option. In this case, if the player cannot or does not want to construct the building, they must end their participation in the episode. Then they are not allowed to place any more buildings. After turning over a construction card, each player is allowed to decide whether to end their participation in the episode. They announce this out aloud and turn over the unconstructed building. When they do this, the player does not lose any points on the scoring track. The player only loses a point if they pass and stays in the episode. An episode ends when all the players have ended their participation in it. If this has not happened, an episode will end after all the construction cards have been turned over. Then each player's points are calculated and marked on the scoring track. For each tree shown on a light green space on the game board, the player gets 1 point. For each rock shown on a light green space on the game board, the player loses 1 point. For each empty light green space visible on the game board, the player loses 1 point. Please note that in the beginning there are only spaces with 2 trees or 2 rocks. These yield 2 points. Later, spaces with 1 tree will be added, which yield 1 point. If a scoring token reaches 50 points in the assessment, the player is immediately allowed to color in 1 progress symbol. The scoring token remains standing at 50 points, even if extra points are added or deducted. If a scoring token goes below 0 points, these negative points do not expire. They will instead be deducted from the next positive points earned. If you are playing with 3 or 4 players, then whoever has attained the most points on the scoring track is allowed to color in 2 progress symbols. Whoever has attained the second most points on the scoring track is allowed to color in 1 progress symbol. But if you're playing with only 2 players, only the player who attained the most points on the scoring track is allowed to color in 2 progress symbols. The second player does not get any progress symbols. Please note that the progress symbols should be colored from left to right. Start in the top row and when it's full, continue to the left on the row beneath it. This way, players can easily see how many progress symbols each player has gained. In addition, the players get various stickers which are applied permanently to their game boards. These stickers can be found in the sealed envelopes along with other game materials. Inside, you will also find the table overview showing what each player gets. If 2 or more players have attained the same point total at the end of an episode, the player who has the fewest empty light green spaces in the top row of their game board will get the top placement. If the result in the first row turns out to be equal, the second row is what counts, etc. After the episode, the game board is cleared off and the scoring token is placed on the 10 mark again. In the next episodes, all the players start rebuilding their city as described in the sealed envelope rule sheet. Inside each envelope, you will find a rule sheet containing a few new rules for each group for the next 3 episodes. Also, you will find a table overview which summarizes how points may be won or lost. Some of the points apply immediately during an episode, but most apply at the end of an episode. In the table overview, you can also read about which players will be allowed to color in progress symbols and get stickers. Some of the stickers are allocated at the beginning of an episode, but most are assigned at the end. Unless otherwise indicated, you have to affix the stickers to empty light green spaces that show a small square in the center. Now that you know all the important rules, you can begin your My City adventure by opening the first envelope, Chapter 1, the New Land episodes 1 to 3. Take out all the content from the envelope, read it to all the players and place it on the table and start playing. When you've played all 24 episodes, you can continue playing the Eternal game on the back of the game board. In this version, all the game boards are identical, and that might be useful if you're playing with friends who are not playing the Legacy game. It's important to note that this version requires that at least one of the players have played the first 5 episodes of the Legacy game. The rules for the Eternal game will not be covered by this video, but you can explore them at your own pace in the last few pages of the rulebook. Now, you've learned how to play My City.